He was caged, unnamed, and scheduled to disappear. Labeled unstable, unfit, and unworthy of love. The silent German shepherd waited in a forgotten facility on the ragged edge of Granite Hollow, Oregon. No one stopped to wonder how a dog so still could carry so much sorrow in his eyes. He didn't bark, didn't move, didn't fight. His silence wasn't calm. It was the silence of someone who had already accepted being forgotten. Until one day, a battle-scarred mechanic, carrying ghosts of his own, walked by and whispered a name the dog had never heard, but somehow impossibly recognized. What came next wasn't just a rescue. It was the start of a quiet war, against silence, against secrecy, and against the powerful people who wanted this dog to vanish. This is a story of loyalty, of sacrifice, and of a bond that never should have existed, but refused to be broken. Before we dive in, take a second to like this video, and let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love hearing your stories too. Now picture this. The rows of metal kennels echoed with chaos, barking, whining, the wild energy of dogs desperate to be seen. But one cage, way at the end of the hall, sat in unsettling stillness. Inside, the German shepherd didn't growl, didn't pace, he just stared. Not at people, not at the floor, just nothing. His tag read only. #K9-47. No name, no story, no second chances. Because here, at the Granite Hollow K9 holding facility, having no name meant being disposable. They said he failed his behavioral assessment, that he snapped during a drill. Too tense, too stubborn, too dangerous. The words were stamped like a verdict, cold, final. He'd never been given a name, so no one ever said one. Don't bother with that one. A volunteer muttered to a couple passing by. He's a biter. But the truth? No one had ever seen him bite, because no one had ever seen him move. He wasn't aggressive. He was just gone. Treated like a memory, like the kind of haunted silence that makes people look away. He hadn't eaten in days. He didn't flinch when thunder cracked overhead. Didn't react when a metal bucket crashed next to his cage. This wasn't training. It was surrender. He was on a list now. A clipboard taped to the break room fridge spelled it out. K9-47. Termination scheduled. Saturday, 3 p.m. It wasn't cruelty, and it definitely wasn't compassion. It was just protocol. And for the German shepherd who didn't even blink when the janitor mopped past his cage, that moment should have been the end of the world. Or maybe it already was. Saturday arrived, heavy and overcast. A gray sky matching the mood no one dared to name. Flyers had been taped up across town all week. Retired K9 units. Final public viewing. As if these dogs were nothing more than outdated hardware, being auctioned off for scrap. By noon, the parking lot was full. Families wandered in, hopeful. Smiles, coffee cups, kids pointing at wagging tails. Shelter staff played their parts, polite, upbeat. On the surface, it almost felt festive. But not inside cage. #K9-47. He'd been brushed, given a quick wipe down. His coat looked cleaner, sure, but his eyes? Still hollow. No one stopped. No one asked about him. No one even paused long enough to care. Except for one man. He arrived late. Wore a jacket stained with grease, hands rough with old work, and eyes that carried too many stories no one had ever asked to hear. His name was Calder Shaw, and he hadn't come looking for a dog. Maybe he didn't even know why he was there. But when he walked past that cage, he stopped. And in that instant, everything changed. The German shepherd looked back, not with fear, not with desperation, but with something eerily calm. Like he'd been waiting, not to be rescued, but to be recognized. In a building full of dogs wagging and whining for attention, Calder had locked eyes with the only one who wasn't trying to be chosen. The only one who had nothing left to ask, and nothing left to prove. Then Calder spoke. Just one word. Bran. It wasn't a name he'd planned. Not even one he knew. But the second it left his mouth, the air shifted, and the dog moved. Brandon twitched. He turned, slow, deliberate, like a statue suddenly remembering it used to breathe. His eyes locked on Calder's, and for a suspended moment, time just stopped. Calder forgot to breathe. The background noise of the facility, chatter, footsteps, barking, faded into a muffled blur, drowned out by the strange gravity building between man and dog. A young staffer stepped up, clutching his clipboard like it might protect him. "That one's not up for adoption," he said sharply. "Failed every evaluation. He's on the final list." Calder didn't answer. Truth is, he wasn't really listening. Not to the kid, anyway. He was staring into something he didn't fully understand. Something broken, bruised, and familiar. The shepherd's coat was thick but patchy, his frame lean, not from training, but neglect. He didn't wag. He didn't flinch. He just stood there, still as a soldier who came home from war, but left something behind. Then Calder said it again, "Bran." And this time, something shifted. The dog stepped forward. Not unsure. Not curious. He moved like someone waking from a long sleep. Out of recognition. The handler's tone jumped. "Sir, step away. That dog." I said his name. Calder cut in, calm but firm. And he heard it. People were watching now. Not all, but enough. The energy in the room shifted. A few heads turned. The air buzzed with tension, like the second before a thunderstorm. Bran's body began to stir. Not panicked, not aggressive, just awake. Something deep inside had stirred, like a memory clawing its way back to the surface. "I want to try," Calder said, his voice steady. "That's not protocol." The handler snapped. Calder didn't blink. Neither is killing a dog who just remembered who he is. Silence. Then finally, the handler stepped back, clearly rattled. "Your responsibility." Calder approached the cage, slow and measured. Bran didn't flinch. Calder lowered himself to one knee, never breaking eye contact. "Bran," he whispered again. The dog took a step, then another, and without hesitation, gently pressed his head into Calder's chest. A ripple moved through the room. Gasps, murmurs, even disbelief. The handler just stood there, mouth slightly open. Calder didn't say a word. He didn't have to. One hand reached up, rested softly on Bran's neck. No trembling, no fear, just peace. The facility went quiet, not from fear, but something deeper. Reverence. A stillness that felt heavy, like everyone knew they were witnessing something they didn't have words for. Then the shelter director stormed in, overdressed in a sport coat, walking with the kind of confidence that tries a little too hard. His eyes locked on the stunned handler. "What is happening?" he snapped. The handler looked like he'd just been hit by a freight train. "He responded to a name, sir. Came out on his own." The director scoffed. "Responded? That's K9-47. He's disqualified. He failed every metric we have. He's not even chipped under a registered owner." Calder stood slowly. Bran stayed right at his side, still alert, still calm, like he knew exactly what this moment meant. "I didn't force him," Calder said quietly. He walked. The director's voice climbed. "You do realize what you're asking for? That dog was bred for strict compliance. He failed protocol. He attacked a handler." But Calder's voice didn't so much as tremble. "I don't care." He knew his name. And just like that, the director's frustration turned bitter. "You want him? Fine. He's yours. But don't come back when he turns on you. We warned you." Calder gave a single nod. That was it. Outside, the rain had started again, slicking the pavement like silver. Calder opened the passenger door of his old, battered truck. Bran paused for just a second, then jumped in with quiet confidence, curling into the seat like he'd done it 100 times. Calder stood there for a moment, watching him through the windshield. There was something unspoken between them now. Not relief, not certainty, but maybe The first faint heartbeat of belonging. He got in, started the engine. As they pulled away from the facility, Calder didn't know exactly what he'd stepped into. Only that it wasn't an accident. Bran was never supposed to be saved. But he had been. And someone out there was definitely not going to be happy about that. The road back to Granite Hollow was wrapped in silence. But not the numb kind Calder had grown used to. This silence had weight. Intent. Bran didn't sleep. He lay curled on the passenger seat, eyes locked on the trees, sliding past like they were memories. It was as if the world outside the window was either brand new or something long forgotten. Calder didn't speak. He didn't even know where to begin. Something had shifted back at that facility. Something had been set in motion. And whatever it was, he was already in too deep to swim his way out. By the time they reached the garage behind his shop, the rain had thickened into a cold mist. The metal door groaned open. Inside, everything was the same. Half-fixed engines, coffee-stained blueprints, bolts scattered across the workbench like breadcrumbs. Not exactly what most would call home. But Bran didn't hesitate. He walked in, calm, sure like he belonged there. He didn't sniff around, didn't explore. He went straight to the far corner, lay down, and fixed his eyes on the door like a sentinel. Calder flipped over a crate and sat down across from him. The two of them just stared at each other. Neither blinked. Neither moved. "You don't act like a dog who forgot how to live," Calder murmured. Bran didn't respond. Not with a sound, not with a shift, but his ears twitched. Just once. Thunder rolled through the hills that night. And that's when Calder saw the first crack in Bran's armor. Lightning flashed across the windows. Bran didn't bark, didn't cower, but he began to pace. Small, tight circles measured, controlled. Then he stopped, rigid, staring at the wall like it might open. And then, he trembled. Not from fear, not from the storm, from memory. Calder didn't move toward him, didn't speak right away. Then gently, "It's all right. You're not there anymore." Bran lowered himself to the ground, still facing the wall, head low, muscles tight, waiting for something to strike. And that's when Calder noticed it. A faint glint beneath the dog's collar. A tag, buried deep in the fur. Not from the shelter, not military, something else. He reached for it slowly, carefully pulled it free. No name, no serial number, just a strange symbol etched into the steel, a compass that pointed nowhere. No north, no south, just jagged slashes inside a circle. He wiped it clean and felt his gut twist. This wasn't a tracker. It was a signature, and someone had gone out of their way to make sure it stayed hidden. The next morning, Calder took Bran to a small clinic just outside Eagle Point Crossing, wedged between an old hardware store and a diner that hadn't seen a crowd in years. The building barely had a sign. The vet, Dr. Rhea Lorne, greeted him with a tired smile until she saw Bran. Or more specifically, the thin, surgical scar just under his ribs. "That's not an injury," she murmured, running her fingers across it. "That's surgical. Precise. Recent." Calder stiffened. The shelter didn't mention it. "They wouldn't," she said, reaching for a handheld scanner. "Because this dog, he wasn't meant to be adopted." She waved the scanner over Bran's shoulder. It buzzed and then died. "Fried," she muttered. "Fried?" Calder asked. "Encrypted. Whatever's inside him. It's not just a chip, and it's not readable by anything I have. This is beyond standard tech." She stepped back and looked him square in the eyes. "If I were you, I'd keep him out of sight, and I'd be very careful who you ask about that tag." That night, Calder sat alone in the garage, turning that tag over and over in his hands like a puzzle piece from the wrong box. It wasn't just what Bran had been through. It was that someone had worked very hard to make sure no one ever knew. Calder didn't sleep, not because of the storm outside, but because of what he'd seen that morning. A black SUV, idling out front, no license plates, no markings, no window roll down. It didn't stop, didn't speed up, just watched, then slowly rolled away. Bran had been sitting by the window the entire time, motionless, focused, silent. And only after the SUV disappeared did he growl. Low, quiet, the kind of sound you feel in your spine. Not because they were being ignored, but because they were being watched. Calder didn't sleep after that. Not really. He started checking the locks twice. Then 3 times. He began keeping the lights off, even during the day. Bran didn't bark, didn't whine, but his behavior had changed too. He no longer rested near the walls. He chose spots where he could see every door, every possible entry point. They weren't being paranoid. They were being studied. And it started small. A delivery truck idled in front of the garage for 10 minutes. No one stepped out. No package was ever delivered. Later that day, Calder found a fresh boot print behind the storage shed, a place no one ever walked. Then one night, he heard it. The gravel shifted outside. Heavy, deliberate. Not the wind, not an animal. Calder stepped out with a crowbar in hand. Bran moved with him, body low, eyes sharp. Then, without warning, Bran lunged toward the left wall of the garage and let out a single, feral bark, the kind that cracks silence like glass. By the time Calder got there, whoever it was already gone. But they'd left something behind. A single bent cigarette, still burning at the tip, and muddy footprints that hadn't been there before. The message was clear. We found you. Calder knew he couldn't keep this buried forever. The next morning, he went back to Dr. Rhea Lorne, with a metal tag in hand, and one question. Who else could have made something like this? She studied it carefully, frowned. Then, without a word, she led him into a cluttered back room. Dusty shelves, dead scanners, and a single flickering monitor. She pulled up Bran's X-ray, zooming in on the foreign object near his shoulder. That's not just a chip, she said slowly. Not exactly. Calder leaned in. So what is it? It's military-grade shielding. But no one's used this stuff in years. This isn't official. It's private. Black budget. Prototype-level tech. Calder's voice dropped. What does it do? I don't know, she admitted. But it's not for tracking. It's for hiding. This isn't about security. This is concealment. She stepped back, visibly unsettled. Be careful. Whatever's inside that dog. Someone went to extraordinary lengths to make sure it was never found. That night, Calder sat next to Bran again. Rain tapped gently on the tin roof. He held the envelope in one hand, the strange tag in the other. You weren't a mistake, he whispered. You were buried. Bran didn't move. Just laid there, head resting against Calder's knee, still and quiet like he already knew. This wasn't some system glitch. Bran wasn't broken. He was suppressed. A memory someone wanted erased and failed to destroy. Then it happened. There was no knock. No footsteps. Just 2 slow taps on the back door. When Calder opened it, no one. Only a manila envelope taped to the frame. Inside was a photo. Grainy. Blurry. But impossible to mistake. Bran, fully suited in tactical K-9 armor, standing beside a man whose face had been scratched out in thick black ink. On the back, scrawled in sharp handwriting, you weren't supposed to find him. Calder looked down. Bran stared at the photo, unblinking. And suddenly, Calder understood. Someone hadn't just forgotten Bran. They had already tried to erase him. And now they knew exactly where to look. The air inside the garage shifted, not just in temperature, but in weight, like the walls had learned a secret and didn't quite know how to hold it. Calder started checking the locks before dusk. He kept the lights off, even during the day. Bran never left his side, and he didn't sleep near the back wall anymore. He stayed where he could see every exit. They weren't being stalked. They were being evaluated, and it didn't happen all at once. A week after the envelope, a delivery van pulled up. No logos. No package. It just sat there, engine humming, facing the garage. Calder stepped outside, pretending to light a cigarette. The van rolled away without a single word. The next day, scuff marks on the fire escape. Fresh. Dirt scraped from a boot. Not Calder's. The real message came late that night. He heard it again, the crunch of gravel behind the garage. Not random. Not lost. Purposeful. Calder crept outside, crowbar in hand. His breath fogged in the cold air. Bran was already with him, body low, ears pinned, tense. Then the shepherd bolted left, growling. Not loud but low. The kind of sound that rattles in your chest. By the time Calder reached him, there was no one there. Just a single boot print and a cigarette still burning in the gravel. They weren't just watching. They were pushing, testing his limits. The next morning, Calder made one last trip to the only man he still trusted, Jude Varn. Jude had been a defense contractor. Now he ran a scrapyard out past the Eagle Point freight lines. He'd helped Calder before, back when the tag was just a puzzle with no pieces. But this time, something was off. The gate was open. Jude's office door was hanging off the hinge. Inside, drawers pulled, papers scattered, files missing, but there were no broken locks, no broken windows, just the kind of quiet mess left behind when someone doesn't need to force their way in. Jude was gone. No message, no warning, just silence, the kind that follows someone who knew too much. Calder didn't speak during the drive home. Bran lay in the back seat, alert, but completely silent, eyes open, watching. When they pulled into the garage lot, Calder knew instantly something was wrong. The lights were on, and Calder never left the lights on. He reached behind the entry wall and grabbed the crowbar. Bran was already on the move, low, fast, slipping between shadows like smoke. They didn't say a word. They didn't have to. Calder rounded the front of the shop and stopped cold. Someone was standing at his workbench. Someone he recognized. But this time, he wasn't wearing janitor blues. Silas Drew, the janitor from the K9 facility. Only now, he was dressed in tactical boots, a plain field jacket, and in his hand, a flash drive. I figured it'd be you, Silas said calmly. Or them. Calder didn't lower the crowbar. You followed me. Silas didn't answer. He just held out the drive. This is everything, he said. The program. The experiments. The terminations. What they did to the dogs that didn't obey. Calder's grip tightened. What was he? Silas looked down. Bran had stepped out from the shadows. Eyes locked on Silas, steady, burning. He was one of the best, Silas said. Until he hesitated. Calder blinked. Hesitated. There was a civilian in the line of fire, Silas said. Bran held back. He disobeyed. Saved her. He looked Calder in the eyes. And that made him a threat. Silas handed over the flash drive like it weighed more than metal and circuits, like it carried a death sentence. They marked him for decommission the same day, he said quietly. Didn't matter that he made the right call. What mattered was that he made his own. Calder stared down at the drive in his hand. It didn't feel like answers. It felt like a bigger target. Silas didn't wait for thanks. He glanced at Bran, really looked at him. They didn't think he'd survive. And they definitely never expected someone like you to pull him out. Then he turned and slipped out the back door. Gone. Just like everyone else who knew too much. Calder sat at his workbench. Bran beside him, upright. Still, he plugged the flash drive into his old laptop. And what filled the screen wasn't just data. It was evidence. Archive reports. Internal memos. Raw, unedited footage. So much footage. One video showed Bran in a training field. Orders barked like bullets. Explosions in the background. Then, a civilian woman appeared, wandering into the chaos. Bran froze. Target acquired. Two silhouettes in front of him. One armed, one innocent. Bran didn't hesitate. He chose a harder path. He protected the civilian. The very next frame, his handler slams him to the ground, screaming in his face. Below the footage, the report read, K9-47, compromise judgment, immediate decommission recommended. They didn't care that he saved a life. They cared that he chose to. Calder closed the laptop, hands trembling. Bran hadn't failed the system. The system failed him. He reached down, resting a hand on Bran's back. You didn't fail, he whispered. They did. Bran leaned into him, not out of habit, not out of training, but out of something deeper, something earned. He wasn't just a survivor. He was the last breath of a truth someone had tried to suffocate. And now, Calder held the one thing they never expected anyone to hold. Proof. Bran didn't just escape their program. He remembered it. He remembered everything. Outside, thunder cracked across the sky. But inside that garage, something else was forming. Not fear. Not paranoia. Resolve. Calder looked around the room. Not like a man hiding, but like someone preparing for a siege. Because this wasn't over. Bran wasn't safe. And now that Calder knew what they'd done to him, what they made him into, he understood one thing for sure. They weren't going to stop coming. But this time, they'd be met at the door. And they wouldn't find a forgotten, failed K9. They'd find Bran. They'd find a sentinel. And they'd find a man who refused to let him disappear ever again. If this story hit you as hard as it hit us, don't scroll away without showing a little love. Drop a comment and tell us, what would you name a rescued German Shepherd like Bran? Smash that like button if you believe in second chances. And hey, share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because you never know who might need a reminder that hope can come with 4 legs and a second chance. Most of all, make sure to subscribe for more powerful, true animal stories just like this one. Because some dogs, they're not just survivors, they're legends in disguise.